fear of speaking out is paralyzing New Zealand.
Exactly. Centralization is silencing our voices.
And reform is crucial for our future.
We are entering a period defined by the Polycrisis. Global threats are no longer waiting their turn. Instead, the simultaneous pressures of artificial intelligence disruption, massive wealth inequality, and climate-forced relocations are hitting our shores all at once. In Aotearoa, we often rely on our number 8 wire mentality to get us through tough times. We assume our historical pragmatism and geographic isolation provide a natural buffer against democratic collapse. But that assumption ignores our architecture. Political power in New Zealand is tightly concentrated, right here, inside a highly centralized executive branch. This chart compares our government structure to similar democracies like Ireland and Denmark. We operate with a unicameral system, meaning no upper house, and a parliament of only 120 seats. Our representational machinery is significantly smaller than our peers. We made a specific trade-off to design it this way. By running a lean government, we save on taxes and limit bureaucracy. The cost is that our leaders lack the sheer bandwidth required for long-term, forward planning. The low-maintenance model that served us in the past lacks the structural depth required to withstand a high-stress future. The vulnerability of our system extends past the beehive and into the behaviors of our citizens and workers. Fear of polarization, workplace retaliation, and cancel culture exerts a heavy chilling effect on speech. People routinely suppress their genuine concerns to avoid professional or social backlash. The ancient Greeks understood this danger and required an antidote they called Parrhesia. It translates to fearless speech, the moral obligation to speak truth to power, regardless of personal cost. Exercising Parrhesia is not glamorous. To stand still and voice an unpopular but necessary truth while the majority rushes past requires accepting acute social isolation. When that isolation proves too heavy, the minority viewpoint stays quiet. That self-censorship creates a data deficit. It distorts perceived public opinion, allowing policymakers to make decisions based on an illusion of consensus. Without the friction of honest, fearless feedback at the micro level, our macro-level institutions are flying blind. Securing our democracy requires treating reform as a hard infrastructure investment. We need to run a strict return on investment analysis on the necessary upgrades. This chart maps our options. We are measuring the financial and cultural effort required against the actual resilience we gain. Investment 1 sits high on both axes, upgrading the parliamentary machine by expanding to 200 MPs and extending the electoral cycle to 4-year terms. The trade-off here is straightforward. Taxpayers must foot the bill for a larger bureaucracy, and voters must wait longer to hold politicians directly accountable at the ballot box. You can see the physical limitations of our current setup in the House of Representatives. We cannot manage the logistics of a complex, modern state using infrastructure built for a smaller, simpler nation. Investment 2 requires building a moral economy. This involves pooling our national risk, actively redistributing wealth, and executing just transition policies for workers displaced by technology or climate. Look at this framework from the OECD's Reinforcing Democracy Initiative. Other nations are establishing precedents for this kind of structural integrity. They prioritize regulating information and building public trust over maintaining an entirely unrestricted market. The trade-off for this level of national solidarity is abandoning the myth that everyone can survive a systemic crisis through individual responsibility alone. It also requires imposing heavy, sustained financial burdens on the wealthy. Macro-level upgrades purchase structural stability. The price of that stability is giving up the comfort of low taxes and the familiar status quo. If we shift our analysis away from government spending, we hit the personal costs of cultural change. Investment 3 is establishing the Parresiastic contract inside our corporate offices and organizations. This requires employers to implement secure, anonymous reporting systems. They must actively reward the employees who bring forward uncomfortable operational truths. The trade-off is entirely on management. Corporate leaders must swallow their egos and endure public vulnerability and institutional critique without defaulting to retaliation. Investment 4 is the mandate for every individual to practice fearless speech in their daily life. This means actively breaking your own echo chambers. It requires stating dissenting facts clearly, even when facing a loud, uniform majority. There is intense vulnerability in being the only source of heat in a cold room. By speaking up, the individual voluntarily accepts acute personal risk, social friction, and potential damage to their career path. A speak-up culture functions as society's best early warning system. We pay for its maintenance entirely with personal courage. The resilience of our system depends on the millions of daily choices made across these streets and offices. First, identify your sphere of influence. As a citizen, support Information Act reform, 4-year parliamentary terms, and pooling national risk. As a people leader, establish the Parresiastic contract and shield vulnerable employees. As an individual, cultivate courage, tell the truth, and accept social friction. Maintaining a functional democracy requires a daily, deliberate investment of our collective resources and personal courage. Weigh your trade-offs and anchor your next decision.